Hey buddies, I want to take a break from the negativity of Xbox One in these vlogs to talk about something awesome. Star Trek Into Darkness. Becky and I just went to watch it a couple nights ago, and it was fucking awesome. I loved it even more than the first one in 2009, which I also loved, but this one just took it to the next level. The action throughout is non-stop, but not in a way that is kind of overwhelming. It cleanses the palette with multiple settings, like the action goes from, on the ground to in the space. I was about to say in the air. It has an intriguing plot, even if it does have a couple holes here or there, but since that's almost Star Trek tradition. And speaking of Star Trek tradition, they do not eschew it in favor of contemporary characters. Although this is considered to be kind of like a reboot, the tributes to the original series are throughout, and the characters continue to be uncannily similar. Bones, in particular, the Doctor is amazing in his role. Who played Bones? Carl Urban is phenomenal in it. Even if they did overplay him, I feel a little bit. They gave him a lot of these like hammy one-liners, which were hilarious, but I feel like they went like one too many or something like that. But it was still fun. Like, the thing to keep in mind, I see there is a lot of negativity surrounding this, but it's a Trek film, right? So Trekkies are one of the hardest people to please, and it comes with a legacy that it will always be compared to. And it's funny because I don't think they're ever going to be able to completely satisfy anyone, because if they're too similar or pay too many tributes to the old series, they'll say that they, didn't get close enough, or they weren't as good as the old series. And if they don't even go near it and don't pay tributes and don't try to mimic it, then people are going to say it doesn't have a Star Trek feel. Either way, I went in, I'm kind of like, I should give you like a frame of reference. I've said on the show before that Ben and I are like Star Trek appreciators. He's watched almost all of Deep Space Nine. I've watched almost all of The Next Generation. He's watched a lot of it too. Neither of us have watched much of the original series, just as much as probably most people. We saw reruns when we were young and stuff. So like, we're not Trekkies by any stretch of the word, but we are definitely, we love the series and the genre. So we're kind of like, fringe observers from just the outside, like, somebody who might watch baseball but only catch like, maybe a tenth of the games each year or something. I don't know, bad analogy. Regardless, so I feel like I fit in this sweet spot where I'm going to love it, because I'm not so far outside that, like, I love sci-fi, first of all, but I'm not so far out like some people. Like Becky has a harder time loving it because she doesn't have that attachment to like the old idea of the Star Trek characters, and she has like no interest in sci-fi. And then I'm not one of the hardcore fans who's going to be extremely critical of every misstep they make throughout. And I put aside my traditional nitpicking throughout, because there are a couple plot holes, and the science gobbledygook throughout is pretty much chalked up to science is magic, as usual. But it still has just enough truth to it to intrigue you and to make you think science is magic. It's fun, and it can be fun when you put it into a science fiction setting, but it's not hard science fiction, and I don't think that would fit for a summer action movie anyways. And that gets back to my point. This is a summer action movie all the way through, and it is so much fun. Like, I don't want to go too many into spoilers or anything, but again, like, they explore the characters really well, and they give them, each of them gets their own badass moment, at least one for every character, I feel. And back to how incredible they are. Simon Pegg as Scotty is insane. Keep forgetting Chekhov's Anton Yelchin is awesome, just like he was in the first one. John Cho is pretty good as Sulu. I feel like he doesn't have that same... It's hard for me to imagine him going from this normal speaking guy, like he talks like just a normal dude. I don't know what else to say, compared to the original Sulu, which was like, Captain, I don't think we can do that. Like that trademark, really Takei style low voice and just a hint of a Japanese accent. So I feel like he's the least close to his original role, but George Takei likes him, so I guess I can't argue with that. And then Bruce Greenwood as Pike is awesome, and I was just thinking today that him and the guy who plays Dr. Grant, who is that, Pine? No, Sam Neill, sorry. Sam Neill and Bruce Greenwood need to be in a movie together where they play siblings. It has to happen. Anyways, Uhura was pretty good too, and they have a relationship throughout between her and Spock that I think adds some... It's important to remember too that a lot of the criticism comes in that Spock has too much emotion in this film. It's important to remember that Spock is half human, and I feel like it was awesome for the writer and Abrams to explore emotion in Spock, because I think they did it well. They played it well. They talk about, you know, him choosing whether or not to feel emotions, and I'm gonna talk more about that in a second. I'm gonna make it... This is the first thing for me, like this first time like talking about movies like this to you. So what I'm going to try to do is structure this so that it starts off very surface, but then it gets further into spoiler territory, and you can choose when to tune out. And I'll try to like make that a very slow transition so that you can choose. But oh yeah, sorry. Zachary Quinto is amazing as Spock, by the way. I loved him in American Horror Story, and it made me... I loved him in 2009 Star Trek before I watched American Horror Story, and now that I've seen him in American Horror Story outside of his roles, I love this guy now. I can't wait to see him in more stuff. Kirk's character by Chris Pine, that's why I got that Pine name on the mind. Chris Pine is awesome as Kirk, and I think that he's just close enough to the original Kirk, played by Shatner, that... I feel it was really perfect, like the balance that they struck between sort of rebooting the character or giving him a fresh feel, but also having still that Kirk attitude and arrogance. Some people say that he's too arrogant, and also that it makes no sense that he's so young in charge of his own ship. It's important to remember his pedigree, where he comes from, and the fact that he's a bit of a tactical prodigy considered in the Academy. And the other thing to remember is that if people think that he's too arrogant in it and it goes too far past Shatner, he's young in this. So like I feel it's they really kind of illustrate well what Kirk would have been like as a young man who's just finding the balance between his bullheadedness, which is an asset for the character, and logic and reason. And again, Spock and Kirk as a pairing is just the most perfect for a captain and first officer that you could find in Star Trek. And I even say that loving Picard and Riker more so than The Next Generation is my favorite, and I love those guys too individually, but I have to admit that Spock and Spock and Kirk are the best pairing in that respect. So I'm going to start to get into more spoilers now. So if you're... I'm not going to make it a slow transition. That's too hard. So if you... I'm going to sum this up for if you haven't seen the movie, I really suggest you go see it. Don't go in as a... Don't be that guy. Don't be that nerd. Don't go in ready to hate it. Go in ready to have fun. And kind of with the spirit of the original series with you. The fun and sort of... science fiction just happens to be the background genre of the show. It's not really the focus. And just like back with the original series, the first and foremost focus was entertainment. And this thing does it in spades. It has everything. I kept on saying to Becky, it has everything. It just keeps going to places that you may have been expecting, but it does it in such a perfect way that you don't care how predictable it may have been, at least in my opinion. So check it out. Star Trek Into Darkness. Okay, now that they're gone, I'm going to talk a little bit about spoiler stuff. As far as Spock's emotions go... Oh, I didn't really cover... I didn't cover Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan. And I guess this should be spoiler territory, because I was chided on the show for predicting he was Khan in the first place, the first time we showed a trailer. I predicted he was Khan with having hardly any Star Trek knowledge. I did see The Wrath of Khan, but it was so far back that it just, to me, as a casual viewer of Star Trek, it made so much sense that he was Khan that it seemed ridiculous that he wouldn't be. And that was based on the first trailer, with no research, no looking around to see if people thought he was Khan or not. I was surprised on the show to find out that people were denying it. Everybody in the chat was saying, like, no, it's been denied, he's not Khan. And then I saw finally we covered it again recently, one of the third trailers, I think, and it was just like, holy crap, this is definitely Khan. It is so Khan. It has to be. So I came on the show deciding that it was like common knowledge that it was Khan, that it would be impossible for someone not to think it wasn't, or that it was. And then people are calling it spoilers. I think that's ridiculous, because if you can't figure out that he's Khan from the trailers, then it doesn't matter to you, because you probably never knew who Khan was. I feel like the only people who couldn't figure out it was Khan didn't know who Khan was. And those who did know who Khan was shouldn't care about spoilers, because they should have figured it out. They should have figured out it was Khan. I know that he doesn't have the same skin color. That's a completely different debate, and I'm not getting into that here. All I can say is that it was the right actor for the job. Cumberbatch is amazing right now. Like, he is very... Obviously, it's also like a popularity decision, too. Cumberbatch is huge right now, and he's going to draw on the audience. And he played an incredible villain throughout. He was terrifying, and I can't wait to see him in other roles. Like, I want to see him as a Bond villain now. He was believable, and he had the best acting chops in the whole film. Maybe next to the guy who played Pike. I keep forgetting his name. I have a cheat sheet here. Greenwood. Greenwood was really good too, but he had just very few scenes, so it's hard to compare. Anyways, going into details about Spock and emotion, again, he's half human, and I think that they explored it perfectly. He talked about how he's able to choose to feel emotions. He's almost able to, his Vulcan side can like keep his human side at bay, and when his human side wants to feel those emotions, he's able to choose whether the Spock or the Vulcan side lets it loose or not. And that's a great theory as to how a Vulcan combined with human genes would work. And the way that they write it makes it's perfect. We'll get right into huge spoiler territory. When Kirk dies, I feel that the reason he was able to cry there and then scream out, Khan! Like, the fact that they found a way to not only make make Kirk die, who we knew couldn't die, so even though we know he's going to somehow survive at the end, we're like, how the hell did they just kill him? And then I put it together pretty quickly. Obviously, it was the Khan blood that was going to be able to get him back to life, but it was just great that they were able to write a way that kind of makes sense that he was able to be brought back to life. There was a huge plot hole, and I acknowledge that the thing with the unfreezing, and they could have easily fixed that plot hole just by saying that, you know, they couldn't get the other guys unfrozen, or something like, say, like the sequences is lock them in, and if we unfreeze them without that sequence, it's going to destroy the body and we won't get any blood. That's all they had to say, and then they didn't need to open up a capsule to put Picard in. They could have just said, like, he can be brought back to life regardless of how long he sits here when we get Khan blood. Whatever. Anyways, that's besides the point. My point is that about the thing with Spock and emotion, giving those moments for him to, I feel like in that moment where he puts his hand up against the glass and he thinks that Kirk is dying, his basically only real friend that he's ever really made, connected with another human that personally, is dying in front of him, he chooses to feel that remorse and that emotion. Just like how on the shuttle he says that he would never choose to feel that emotion again because it was too painful. He chooses at that moment because he feels that strongly about Kirk, that he feels that friendship enough that he is going to choose to feel that emotion. And I think that adds, instead of detracting from his identity as a Vulcan, I think it adds to it. It made his character stronger, and then primed everybody for a badass sequence in which he goes after Khan, like sprinting with a telephoto lens, made it so awesome, sprinting through that crowd after Khan, and the whip pans to Khan, and like friggin', you know, Quinto just full tilt running through all these people was beautiful. And then his showdown with Khan just makes, and it also made sense that he was able to face off against Khan. Maybe it doesn't make sense that he was able to take so many punches from him, but the fact that he's able to face off against Khan because of his special ability as a Vulcan to fuck with his head kind of made sense that of anybody who could face off against him, Spock could. Speaking of which, getting advice from old Spock was a great little, not only another cameo, which everybody's going to welcome those Nimoy cameos. If you don't welcome a Nimoy cameo, then what the fuck's wrong with you? And I forgot that he was still alive. I thought for some reason in 2009 movie he kind of left on a note that I'm going to go off and live the rest of my life now and kind of just die. But he came back, and I because of that I had an extra special surprise during the film. I was like, what? Oh yeah, he's still alive. That was great. But to write in another cameo that made sense as well was awesome. And the only thing that kind of was silly, I think, at that point was when Uhura, of all people, they decided it was the best tactical decision to send Uhura down to help out Spock. I understand emotionally why she was the one to go do it, and I guess all it takes is just shooting the gun. But she's a translator. I don't know, does she have combat experience? Maybe she had lots of combat experience at the academy like all cadets get. Maybe it does make sense. I don't know. It just felt kind of weird. And, well, whatever. It adds emotion to the film, so I can completely understand it. The other part, right after that, I wish that Bones hadn't said, Uhura and I had something to do with it too, when Kirk gives credit to Spock for bringing him back to life. I think he just should have said, I had something to do with it too. I feel like crediting Uhura as well goes outside of his character as being a curmudgeonly stick in the mud. I think he should have just... or maybe they thought that would make him too narcissistic. I don't know. Anyways, another fact that I thought was interesting was you go into the movie, if you have any head on your shoulders as a Trek fan, you go into the movie knowing that Khan is going to be there, and you expect this whole thing to be this epic face-off between Khan and Kirk, but in fact it ends up being like this Kirk feeling kind of inferior to Khan throughout the movie, and they never really have a showdown. The whole time throughout, Kirk kind of looks weak-willed. You can tell that Khan is playing him emotionally throughout the whole film. Any physical standoff they have, Kirk obviously loses. The true standoff in the film was between Spock and Khan, and everything from their tactical showdown when they have to he has to decide. Well, of course he had help from a future himself, so he had an edge, but he needed an edge. He's against a superior intelligence and a superior fighting force. So, but anyways, I thought it was great, and it further explored Quinto's ability to act. I think Quinto is awesome. Can't wait to see him in more roles. I think I've covered almost everything I want to say. Besides the fact that the movie had everything. Like, fucking, space battles, like, it included Klingons. Oh, that's another moment that didn't really make sense. How the hell did they think it was a good idea? Sure, she speaks Klingon, but Uhura, the only female on ship, going out, maybe I'm crossed on what Klingon libido is like, but I feel like sending a sexy lady out to translate to Klingons and to try to face off with them one-on-one was just not the best decision. And I know Kirk was against it, but I can't believe that Spock thought that was the best logical course of action. I can understand it if their intention from the very beginning was to surprise ambush them from the side, but to think that was going to work, I think, was kind of insane, especially at that moment in history. And as far as that moment in history goes, people think that it was ridiculous that, the Admiral, what's his name? Admiral, what's the guy's name? I forget the dude's name. Admiral Marcus, going out to seek the help of a superior intelligence from 300 years ago. Remember, Khan is a guy who's genetically engineered by humans. He's supposed to be Indian. The nation of India genetically engineers him to be superior, and I guess, I don't know the whole history of Khan, but like, he was ostracized because, or like, he was exiled because he was trying to kill, I think his people were trying to kill anybody who was inferior to them, which was everybody, I think. But the point is, to go out and seek his counsel, they established that Marcus is an at-any-cost type of military man, so it makes sense that he would go to those lengths thinking that the way of life on Earth was in threat from the Klingons, who at this point in history were completely aggressors against everybody, especially the Federation, who were supposed to be only explorers. And he saw a scenario where the Klingons come and take over Earth. So he wanted Khan to help them design something that could give them an edge. It makes sense to me. But anyways, to have scenes with like a gigantic Enterprise class ship. I guess maybe it's not Enterprise class, but anyways, to have a gigantic warbird face off against the Enterprise like that, just obliterate it. Oh, another thing I loved was the fact that they didn't pull any punches. They show people dying. They show crew members flying around the ship, getting killed. Collateral damage. Well, not collateral. In the line of fire damage happening. They didn't, like, you know, make it all peachy and rose-colored by letting Kirk save everybody he sees that's in trouble or something like that. They even have a shot where a girl goes, like, sliding down a catwalk. You know she's going to die. He looks at her kind of like with this, like, he wishes he could save her, but he knows there's no time. And some people say that, like, you know, the only people he cares about is, like, the main cast in it. I think that the only opportunities he ever had to save somebody was the main cast. I think they handled it quite deftly to make it make sense. That he didn't have to play the hero in every moment that a cast member, that a crew member was dying. And I love to see, like, it really added gravity to the situation that you see people getting sucked out into space, flying around the cabin, getting knocked about. Anyways, and then again, I keep going back, to have, like, Enterprises crashing to Earth, and to make people who watch the trailer think that the Enterprise crashed into the water there next to the city, as opposed to the actual warbird crashing, and to have that moment in the clouds where it drops through the clouds and you think it's going down because you saw it in the trailer, but then it comes back up, you're like, holy crap. You know, even though I watched the trailers, I had a eureka, well, not a eureka, just a happy, like, yeah moment. Speaking of yeahs, I wish that I'd been kind of with a larger crowd, or at least with Ben when I went to see it, because I wanted to cheer when Spock screamed out Khan at that moment that Kirk died. It had those moments. It's a great summer flick. It has those moments where you want to cheer out loud, I think. Unless you go in as a pessimist, I think you're going to have a great time. It's a fun movie, and it's a great Trek film. I can't wait for... I really hope Abrams makes another, and I really hope that he is involved with the next Star Wars, because I feel like if anybody can save it, it's him. I hope he brings the same polish and class and respect for the original material, with an adherence to modern conventions, but with respect to the original material that he seems to be able to always pull off. If he brings that to Star Wars, we just might see a refreshing reboot of the franchise, and just gritty enough, you know, to get back to that old Star Wars feel. I want to see that. That's just on my wish list. The only thing that could make it better is if Nolan was somehow involved too. Maybe he is. I don't keep up with internet rumors really that well. So if Christopher Nolan if Christopher Nolan produced and Abrams directed, or even a swap on the two, if those two came at this, I just want, it doesn't have to be them, but I want the feel that they are bringing to these old franchises, these reboots, I want to see applied to Star Wars. So anyways, that was my... It's not a review, it's my impressions, it's what I liked about it. Sure, some of you guys have different opinions on it, but go ahead, talk about them in the comments, and I will see if I have the time to respond to them. I'll be kicking around today, so I'll respond definitely when I don't agree. I love you guys, go see the movie, seriously. Well, if you're watching this long, you probably don't need to, it was all spoiled for you, so I hope you tuned out. I love you.